Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's me Anargya and today's video is going to be about my latest book obsession. It is the Good Girl's Guide to Murder book series. I just finished it yesterday and I absolutely love it. I love the trilogy. I read all three books in 3 days. I listened to the book in the form of audiobook on Spotify. You can check it out, it's literally free, and the audio narration for this book is so amazing. Like all three parts, they have like full up teams there, and you can just like listen to the whole book, and it's amazing. Like you won't be able to put down your earphones. You'll love it. Okay, let me get into it first. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you like a review of what the background is all about, because we have three books. So I'm just gonna like tell you what the three parts are about, and then you can just decide what you want to do. And this is a trilogy, and this is like in sequence, so you can't really pick up any book and just start with any of them. You have to read them in the proper order. The first book is called A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. The second book is called Good Girl Bad Blood, and the third book is called As Good as Dead. All three are amazing, and if you read them in sequence, the third book, by the ending of the third book, you're just like filled and fully satisfied. So let's get started. So in our story here, we have Pippa Fitzimobi, who is the main character of the whole series. She is this 17-year-old girl. In the beginning of the series, she is 17, and she basically has this school project for which she decides to reinvestigate the murder case of Andy Bell. Andy Bell is like the Miss Popular girl of the town, and therefore her murder case was like very huge, and it happened like 5 years prior to the whole incident. And at that time, allegedly, her boyfriend, Andy's boyfriend, Sal Singh, was supposed to be the killer of Andy, who further goes on to commit suicide after killing her due to the guilt that was going through him at that point. And that was supposedly the story, but Pip personally didn't believe that, because she somehow indirectly knew Sal. So she was like sort of convinced that he couldn't be the murderer, because she knew him and she had seen him, and he was one of the nicest seniors she had. He would always be there by her side, and he would always fight off the bullies and just be there for her for no reason at all, just because he was a nice person and that's who he was. And literally, so it was really difficult for her to believe something like that even happened, and the whole scene just seemed very sketchy and like just not right. So she really wanted to investigate that scene. That is what the first book is about. Now obviously we know that Sal Singh wasn't the killer. Like there's no spoiler in that, because obviously how would the book be written if that was the whole story after all. So she goes on, she reinvestigates the case, she finds the real killer, and she finds out how did that whole scene actually play out. That's what the first book is about, and really amazing, very nice. Like you can just go on and read it, like no matter if you are into like a little bit of like suspense thrillers, young adult fiction, or even a little bit of romance. Like to be honest, the book one doesn't have much of romance going on in it, but we just have that little bit of sparks here and there, which is like next to zero again. But so yeah, you can check it out. It's literally like a young adult sort of fiction, and it's really amazing, and obviously it is pretty good. The suspense is good, and the whole situation that turns out at the end is totally unexpected. There's a lot of, because we have the whole town and there's a lot of sketchy characters, and all of these characters are so much interlinked, and there's so much connections, and everyone knows everyone. So it's very difficult to find out who is who and what's going on, and you have to keep a mental sketch of the characters while you're reading this book, because otherwise it gets really difficult to keep a track of the story. Not that difficult, to be honest, but still it's better to keep it that way. And due to there being so many suspects, it's literally a very good guessing game, and you'll totally enjoy this roller coaster ride. So that's what the first book was about. In the second book, we have Pip turns 18, and one of her bestest friends, Connor, his older brother, basically gets lost. I mean, he doesn't get lost, but it's like he just disappears. He leaves the home and he's not anywhere to be found, and Connor is just very much afraid, and he approaches Pip and tells her, like this is going on. You have to find out my brother. I just don't know, but I have this feeling that there's something wrong going on with him, and etc. Now basically what the thing was, when Connor's family reported the case of Jamie, Jamie being missing, the police didn't really pay attention to it because number one, Jamie was not a minor, so therefore him disappearing is not that big of a deal. And second of all, Jamie was a person who was known for just leaving the house and returning a few days later, being away for a while. And that's why this thing was not very out of character for him. And obviously the police had way more cases going on at that time, so they had to prioritize cases. So they thought that okay, Jamie will return in a few days, and that's why the police wasn't paying much attention to it. However, Pep was very much determined that she won't do this whole thing again, because it really took a toll on her last time, and she had to go through a lot of hardships through that whole first book. But after all, it was Connor, and he was really asking her for help, and she in herself felt that something was wrong with him, so she couldn't deny him and she had to investigate. So that's when the book 2 starts. And by the end of book 1, the whole thing that happened with her, that whole scenario, it basically, because she reinvestigated the whole case and it was something so unexpected that it reached way many higher levels, and it was recognized on a national level or something like that. And basically she started a podcast after that whole thing. So that was like the season 1 of the podcast, and people were asking for season 2. Now basically she turns this whole Jamie's event into a season 2, and that's the season, that's the second book, in where we learn what happened to Jamie and how did he get lost. And there's like serial killers we're talking about here in this book. Like in the second book, it gets really dirty in the end. Like it gets too intense at a point, and it's just as good as the first part, if not more. And although I have more of a soft corner for the first part, because in the first part they're all pretty young, and they're dating back to the time 5 years ago when all the characters were in their like early teens and stuff, and it was like very cute for some reason. And in the second book they're more like adultish, so it gets a little boring, but not boring exactly, but it gets a little what I mean. It's just not that teenage vibe is not there anymore. And yeah, so that's the second book, but the suspense A plus, like you could never guess. And yeah, you can read it on Spotify through that audiobook thingy. And for book 3, this is my personal favorite. Like, oh my god, like I just loved it for some reason so much. Like, yeah, if I had to rank the books, I would rank it like part 3, part 1, and then part 2, or part 1, part 3, and part 2. Like part 1 and 3, it's just very confusing because part 1 is just, however, I read it like 3 days ago, but I still feel that sort of nostalgic sort of connect to it. And part 3 is just very well written. Like it's just very amazing, and it just has that sort of kick. And however, like part 1 is sort of wholesome too, so it's difficult to choose. But however, so basically in part 3 what happens is now Pip is she's out of school, and there's just a few months left before she starts out in Cambridge, her dream university. And Ravi also has applied to some law school or something, I don't know, I don't remember exactly, because Pep was the main interest. And basically what happens in the third book is that by the ending of second book, there's some major events due to which Pip has basically lost a part of herself in that second book, because by the ending of the second book, she basically has to go through so much of this emotional mental trauma, that in the third book basically it gets to a point where she starts taking drugs just to fall asleep at night, and she's obviously experiencing a very serious amount of like PTSD. And that's when her life, when it just couldn't get any worse, it does, because now she has a stalker. And it's like she notices very silent little things around her. At first that's online, because due to her podcast, it's like her number, her whole identity is out there. And this one person who goes by Anonymous just keeps like sending her emails asking her who will search for you when you're the one who disappears. And she ignores it, like she doesn't even pay much attention to it. But then she sees like, why is it everywhere, and why is this person keeps repeating the same words. And then she starts watching some things offline. There are very minor things which only she will pay attention to, and which are like too basic to be even considered stalking. But however, it's like she just feels very much threatened by all those things, and she approaches the policeman, the main policeman of that town, who was the one who was in charge of all those investigation in the prior books, and he couldn't solve the cases. So yeah, she approaches him and she tells him whatever's going on, and he just kind of nudges her off and says that you're experiencing PTSD. That's why you start making things up, and he very gently tells her all of that. But in short, he was just calling her sort of like crazy for imagining stuff like that. That's why she's very much taken aback, and she's like, how dare you say that? Like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here in this position today. Like, I had to suffer all of that because of you, because you weren't doing your job well and all that kind of stuff. But he tells her that just give it some rest. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't make an investigation out of this, because there's not much evidence that you are being stalked in the first place. So she was very upset and she leaves that police station. So she and her boyfriend, you can guess who it is. So she and her boyfriend, they research on that topic. They try to find out these sort of symptoms about her stalker, and that leads them to a serial killer. A serial killer who basically pleaded guilty and is in jail. But apparently that guy who is in jail is not the real serial killer, and the actual serial killer is on the loose. And now this third case is gonna be Pip's final case that she will solve, that will kind of like fix her, and she believes that solving this case would fix her, and it would bring back peace to her, and she would feel like herself again. And she had to save herself was the main line throughout the whole book. And this is my favorite novel in the series. It's totally amazing, and it gives you that sort of ending where everything was connected right from part one, and all those suspects that were there in part one to all those characters start coming up again, and she has to go through a lot of past events of part one and part two and everything. It is fully connected, it's fully amazing, enjoyable, and you love it. She finds out the killer, and basically this Good Girl Guide to Murder, that should have been the name of the third book, because this is a guide to murder and how to get away with it. It was totally amazing. I would rate it full 5 stars, and I cannot recommend it enough. I just finished it yesterday, and you should too. Just get on with it because it's amazing and you'll love it. And that was about the 3 books. Like, this was like a basic plot, and you can for sure find out if you want to try it out. You definitely should. I would totally recommend it. So go try it out and let me know how do you like it in the comments below. If you've already read it, let me know which part was your favorite. And yeah, I guess that's it for today's video. Subscribe, and until I see you next time, bye bye and take care.